Three, two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Welcome to the KNC waiting room. All right, where we're gonna.
Is it really called KNC?
Yes, we went through this last week.
I know. I don't believe it's called KNC. It's not KAC. They're really using the N.
I mean, they're not doing. We established this last week. Let's move on. It's like they're playing it off of D&D, so it only makes sense that it's KNC. They're not doing. Anyways, we established this last week. We still have a while to go.
Wait, hold on. We need to restart this.
Makes sense that it's KNC. Okay. They're not doing. Because
there was a background audio thing. Okay. We need to restart this because I had an open stream and it did not actually turn. Also, CK and C. Oh my god. See, I think I'm actually right about this. Hold up, guys. This is not actually on the podcast, but I think I'm actually right at this. Hold on. Kobolds and catacombs. I think it's K the ampersand and then C, not the letter N.
Okay.
I want to see if the wiki has the official abbreviation. Because I really think I'm right about this. Alright, there's no official abbreviation yet.
There's no official abbreviation, period.
No, there is, because they mark it. You can find it in the files, what they call things.
Ah.
There actually is official Blizzard abbreviations for all these sets. But they don't have it for this yet.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, let's go back. Cold start. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Welcome back to the KNC waiting room, where we basically wait for news about the new expansion.
And I think we have established, now that we have done a little research before this, that it is K ampersand C, not KNC.
And this is from
trustworthy sources on Twitch chat.
The most trustworthy Twitch chat, which means the most trustworthy sources.
We may not listen to you when you call lethal or suggest plays, but when you tell us how to say KNC, that we'll listen to.
Fantastic. All right. So once again, this is the very familiar period where they hyped everything up and then they said, we'll give you more info in 2 to 3 weeks. And we're in the middle of that period. Surprisingly, though, there have been developments. There have been news, not about the expansion, but other stuff.
Stuff that affects you right now, or probably right now. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, it will affect you right now.
Yeah. Anyways, ADWCTA, what is the news?
The news is that Death Knights are gone from the arena forever, starting on Tuesday. And that comes randomly, really, really randomly. It just came as a one-off announcement. It wasn't a part of anything else. Blizzard was just like, hey, by the way, guys, no more Death Knights coming up, just so you know. And in some ways, it was a long time coming, right? People have been complaining about Death Knights since day one. Crit made a video on it. After a while, Blizzard said, no, we're not going to take Death Knights away. They did the synergy change. They still didn't take Death Knights away. People still kept complaining. And I think it just got to the point that they're like, why are we defending Death Knights if people don't like it?
Yeah. I think it'd be good to read because it's a short message, right? And I want to read a couple of sentences from their announcement. So it was posted by Zariah, who's a community manager on the Blizzard forums. Zariah basically says, we're removing, starting the morning of Tuesday, November 14th, we're removing Death Knights. And specifically, while the Death Knight hero cards are exciting and powerful to play, their permanent hero power upgrades are hard to combat in a format where answers are limited.
Wait, how do you combat it in Constructed?
More answers.
Yeah. How do you answer it? What's the official?
No, exactly. I mean, That's what I want to talk about, right? It's like,
oh, that whole response is nonsense, even from a constructed perspective.
yeah,
Because from the arena perspective, it's true, but that's how they designed the card. Like,
right.
I don't think constructed has an answer. You can't like undeath knight your opponent or like replace their hero power with something else. That'd be a cool card, by the way. Replace your opponent's hero power with this other hero power just to screw with them.
Right. Because, and then, it all goes to what your interpretation of answers is, right? You can say, well, if it's just constructed decks are more powerful so they can, combat Death Knights more, it's like, well, then the Death Knight decks themselves are more powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know what this was. And it just seems, maybe it's just some boilerplate language that they put out there.
Yeah,
but
it's the community language. They get to like kind of,
Right. But look, let's just call a spade.
Yeah.
And let's just say the community was very angry about it, right?
Consistently so for a long time.
Right.
It was not a flash of the pan like, oh my god, and then people forgot about it. After a while, this
was what people have been complaining about for a long time, right? Like they moved on from Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird, they moved on from Flame Strike, they moved on from Abyssal, and now Death Knight. And I would say the Death Knight uproar was probably like the most angry that people have been about a card, and especially like Frostlich Jaina, right? That was like, oh my god, the boogeyman.
Oh my god, all the Frostlich Jaina hate. Like I keep saying this, I have like over a 70% win rate against Frostlich Jaina. It's not like it's people and their inability to play against this card.
Right. So the anger in regards to the Death Knights was, it was at a fever pitch, right? And Blizzard Blizzard saw this and they were like, okay, well, people hate these cards. Let's get rid of them. It just makes me feel like, why are you saying it's about like, oh, it's about the format, it's about like answers? Like,
they probably didn't think it sounded as good to say, because people didn't like it, we're going to take it away. Because they did that with Flappy Bird. It's not like they never admit it, with Flappy Bird they're like, people really hate this card, we're going to take it away. Because there's counterplay to Flappy Bird. There's plenty of counterplay. It's called remove the damn thing, right? It has 3 health to start with. It doesn't have charge. You're fine, right? Flappy Bird wasn't even that powerful of a card, like in general, right? It gets rated on the tier list highly, but it's like barely premium, right? It's not even like super premium. They are not Death Knights. Death Knights are way more powerful. But people don't like it, they don't like it. I think that's all there is. I don't think there's anything to really like analyze there. Like, yeah, Blizzard gave some kind of statement that, tried to make it sound a little better than we're caving, but they're caving. Everyone knows they're caving. If you knew about the Death Knights thing, you know that they're caving. This is not like some well thought out decision that they made. This is like, okay, what's the point of keeping Death Knights in the arena? They're legendary cards. I don't think anyone's playing the arena to get a Death Knight. It's not like a draw to the arena. And enough people hate seeing Death Knights in the arena. It's just going to make everyone have a better experience to get rid of Death Knights. Which I think is true. Like, if you've been listening to the Lightforge for the entirety of KFC, you know that we don't really have a problem with Death Knights.
KFT.
It's
please get it right by the end of the match.
So in KFT, we've always been kind of like, Death Knights, they're great cards. We rated them really high. We didn't really change the rating afterwards. Like, we got it right to begin with, right? They're some of the best legendaries in the game. Some other tier lists did not get it right to begin with and had to adjust their ratings severely to account for Death Knights. But anyway, the point is, I kind of saw what Death Knights were going to do, and we got it right. And then they did exactly that, which is a really big and powerful thing, and it will win you a lot of games. But they're not unbeatable, and they're not like creating a new category of premiumness among the cards. Like, there are plenty of cards out there, and I will give a not so short list right after this of cards that we rate higher than the Death Knights. And my diagnosis, and I've said it in the very beginning, I was really hoping the community would like come around to it because it's not that hard. But I guess I was too optimistic about general people's like ability to change their playstyle. And it is kind of weird to like change your playstyle for these like particular legendary cards before they even come on the board, right? Because for Death Knights, you really have to play in a way so that before they come on the board, you have enough pressure that if they come on the board, they either don't get a chance to come on the board, or if they come on the board, you're still okay.
Right. And I found myself a lot of times, it's like, it's in sort of that category. I wouldn't say it's exactly like Deathwing, but if you're really ahead, you want to start thinking, it's like, okay, what are things that could possibly beat me in the long term?
Or not really that. All you have to do is get really ahead. I think the problem with most people is that they're not really ahead. They're either slightly ahead or not ahead at all. And then the Death Knight comes in and it's game over, right? And they're like, oh, this feels really bad because the Death Knight killed me. No, you're probably going to lose that game anyway. The Death Knights changed the odds of you winning from like 25% to like 5%. And you're very upset about that, which is fine. But if you're in the position that you should be, which is generally winning, then the Death Knights don't do that much. Like, the better and more aggressive of a player that you are, the better you deal against Death Knights, because you deal with it before they come on the board. And if they come on the board, the number of times that Death Knights get played and I beat them is, like I said, 70%. More than 70%. That's after they play the Death Knight. Why? Yeah. Because you have to anti-tempo for the Death Knight. Like, it's not a terribly difficult card to figure out how to beat. Except the way to beat the Death Knight is to be good at the game before you see the Death Knight. That's the problem. And it's a general be good at the game thing. So it's kind of hard to, like, if people are like, oh, I'm having trouble with Death Knights, how do I beat them? Like, my advice is be good at the game so you have the board and you're putting pressure on the opponent. And it's like, okay, fine, I understand this is not very helpful. You can't just tell a player. And I don't mean like, you know, there's horrible players out there who can't deal with Death Knights. Good players can't deal with Death Knights. You have to, like, be at a certain level where you're just consistently, always, significantly on the board. Not like you're fighting with the opponent for the board, or like you're up by like a mana or two, because the Death Knight spots you like 3 mana, and then they make up for it over the course of the next 3 turns. So at 3 turns after they play the Death Knight, they are back to where they were before, and you have lost your like window, and they will get even more tempo every turn, and they obviously have the inevitability of winning if the game drags on. So you have a very short window after they play the Death Knight. But still, like, overall, it's kind of a fair card as far as premium cards go, right? It's kind of a fair premium card to play. And people just don't deal with it well. They deal with it horribly. Like, Death Knight win rates on, like, HS Replay are insanely high. And they're insanely high precisely because people deal with Death Knights really, really poorly. And they lose to them. And they feel bad about it. And they blame the Death Knights rather than their own play. Because I guess it's really hard to blame your own play when there's nothing specific about your play that you did wrong.
Yeah, I will say, losing to Death Knights, it's hard to see where it went wrong for you. Right?
Yeah, but because it went wrong in a million little different ways, which is why you were not winning by the time they played the Death Knight.
Right, it went wrong on turn 3, it went wrong on turn 4, it went wrong on turn 5. And then because
and not like horribly wrong, just like you could have maximized, you could have gotten like an extra stat on the board here, right? You could have gotten like 4 more damage to the face there,
right?
And like all that adds up. But when you're reviewing your own plays, you're like, oh, it didn't matter that much. Oh, this was fine. This was whatever. And then the Death Knight comes and you're done. But when there exist players out there like us that are doing fine against Death Knights, it means it's fine. But I understand from a game design perspective, that's probably not a great card to put in your game if you're trying to make the game more accessible to people. It's a pretty good card to put in the game if you are, you know, just doing it based on skill, but that's not really that's not really what Blizzard cares about when they're removing cards from the game, right? They do it based on how public outrage, generally. Like, we've seen it happen like so many times. And sometimes it's, you know, for the better when they remove certain cards that shouldn't be in the arena, and other times it's not for the worse. I don't think, like, I certainly don't want Death Knights in the arena. I don't think it's adding anything particularly special to the arena. Right. I'm not going to miss them when they go. But it's just, it's really interesting to me, like, the impact of the Death Knight and just how big of an impact. And if you want to, like, hear more about this, because I don't want us to keep talking about the Death Knights going on about, like, oh, you can actually beat Death Knights, especially when it's not going to help anyone anymore, because Death Knights are leaving the arena. But we had a whole Lightforge, if you go back a few months, like when I think it's towards the end of August, when we just talked about, like, an entire Lightforge on Death Knights and how to deal with them. Anyway, what I want to talk about, though, is that if we're just removing cards that have annoyingly high win rates for people and are, like, really, really powerful, because we don't want really, really, really powerful single cards to dictate the entire game because it feels bad, which is a fine philosophy. I don't mind it at all. I'm gonna list a whole series of cards now that are rated around the same, like vaguely. Some are a little lower than the usual Death Knights, some are a little higher than the usual Death Knights, but they're all like super premium cards. And all of these, I'm going to first give you the list of all the cards that just should not be in the arena, period. Like, if your reasoning for Death Knights is, oh, this card has way too few counterplays, and, you know, it's way too good, and if you have a Death Knight, it's so much better than a deck without a Death Knight, that it makes the game not fun. If that's your reasoning for it, the following cards are all as bad as, if not worse than, Death Knights for that, and so should therefore not be in the game either. The first one, the one I bitch about the most, is Primordial Drake, because not only, first of all, it's the only neutral card, it's the only neutral non-legendary card on this list. Like, it stands out. It's literally the only neutral non-legendary card on this list. And this list is, like, created by our algorithm, so it's not even, like, purely subjective. It's not even mostly subjective. It's like, these are just objectively insanely good cards. The problem with Primordial Drake goes above that, in that Primordial Drake punishes good play and helps bad play. So it's even worse than, like, in my opinion, it's even worse than RNG. I think in most people's opinion, it's probably a little better than RNG, but it's still, generally speaking, it's a bad game design on top of an overpowered card for Primordial Drake. But also other ones, Lich King, like, definitely needs to leave. Ultimate Infestation is, like, literally, like, the second highest card, or the third highest card rated in our system, and it's just, you know, everyone knows this is an unnecessary card. Constructed or what do you call it? Or Arena. And Blizzard...
Or Arena, the thing that we play.
Yeah, the thing that we play. I don't know what this game mode is called. And you saw Blizzard do this before, right? They've already nerfed some Druid cards because of Ultimate Infestation. They've nerfed Innervate, they've nerfed, you know, some other cards. Spreading play, yeah. And this is the same thing they did with Warrior back in the day. Remember when they were nerfing everything besides Warsong Commander? They were just like, these cards are all, like, too powerful for the Warrior. And everyone's like, no, the problem is Warsong Commander. Could we please just get rid of Warsong Commander charging stuff? And then they eventually did, but they had to nerf a few cards before that. So I think eventually Ultimate Infestation is going to get nerfed. But not yet. Pyros, obviously, best card in the game.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Meteor. Yeah. Meteor is insanely powerful. You know, all the numbers back it up. Archmage Antonidas is more of a borderline case. I'm throwing him in there. But Primordial Glyph is also insane. Kazakis definitely should not be in the game. These are just, like, no counterplay game winners, you know? Vine Cleaver, Sunkeeper Tarum, your Dragonfire Potion and Fellfire Potions all qualify. Vile Spine. That's just, like, I don't know.
Vile Spine is dumb.
When they print the card, it's like, what are you doing? Like, and these are all, like, objectively done by an algorithm, gets rated too high because it's doing too much stuff. It's doing way more stuff than it should. And then Fool's Bane. And Gorehowl. Those are well, let's not talk about Gorehowl yet. I'm just gonna say Fool's Bane. So those are the cards that you should just remove, and is, you know, just determined by the Lightforge algorithm to be way too powerful. And then there's a few other cards that are actually way too powerful, but these are part of the classic set. And so I'm gonna say some more cards here, and these are also around the same level as Death Knights, but they're in the classic sets. I don't really know what to do about them, but that's where Gorehowl is, right? Gorehowl is the second best card rated by our entire system. And I don't think too many people will disagree with that. The second most powerful non-legendary card rated by our entire system. And I don't think too many people will disagree with that. I don't know. Like, maybe it's a classic set, so it's grandfathered in. Maybe we should get rid of it from the arena too. Shadowflame, same deal. It's an insanely overpowered card. And then your 3 rogue cards, which are actually going to go down a bit in the next iteration of the Lightforge tier list, but they're still going to be, like, way more super premium than they have any right to be. Backstab, Betrayal, and Eviscerate. Like, they're part of the core rogue cards that always ensures that rogue is near the top of the game. And then finally, Deathwing and Aldor Peacekeeper.
Yeah, Deathwing. Anyways, Go on.
Okay,
Sorry.
so that's a list of stuff that, like, if it were up to me, I would take all of these cards and remove them all from the arena. Like, I don't think any of these cards adds anything good to the arena. Like, do we need an Eviscerate in the arena? We really don't. Do we need Backstab in the arena? Definitely not. I'd rather have Eviscerate in the arena than Backstab. Betrayal's just, it's not just because I hate positioning, but the swing effect is really, really too big, right? And of course, Defile. I think I accidentally I accidentally skipped Defile, but obviously Defile is way too good. They just cause way too much good, like, big swings, and they punish people who are good at the game. Like, it's not very well designed, in my opinion. At least not for the arena. Like, I would like to hear a good argument to give a class a card like Shadow Flame or Aldor or Gorehowl or Backstab. Like, it's just so unnecessary, and it is so powerful. And there are some other cards, though, that are similarly powered, overpowered, but I have less of a problem with. And I can explain why in a bit, but I'll just go over the list of the cards. These are cards that are just as good as those other cards we mentioned before, but I kind of have less of a problem with. And maybe it's just my own bias, but they are Naturalize and Sap.
Okay.
They're super powerful. I'm kind of okay with them staying in the arena, but, you know, they are really that powerful. 3 more weapons: Eaglehorn Bow, True Silver Champion, and Jade Claws. Jade Claws, I think, less of a problem because Jade is going to become worse, like, as the expansions come out, so maybe not too much of a problem. But True Silver and Eaglehorn Bow are, like, insane weapons for what they do. Like, True Silver may not seem that insane, but that heal face makes so much of a difference.
Yeah.
And
so
Eaglehorn Bow, just because it's in Hunter.
Right. So is that your list?
Nope. I have 3 more. 2 of them are already reduced by Blizzards: Flame Strike and Abyssal Enforcer. They are also super powerful. They have already had their offering rates reduced by Blizzard. But again, I don't really mind them. They seem like they're fitting with the classes, and maybe it's just, like I said, right? Maybe it's just I've been around them so much that I know how to play around them, and I feel like they don't violate any, like, things that make it different for the class. But they are also, like, maybe there's no fundamental difference between an Abyssal Enforcer and a Vile Spy, right? They're both super overpowered game-winning cards. But those 2 are also there. And then Despicable Dreadlord. And that's the full list. That's the list of every card that our algorithm thinks is roughly around, like, give or take 10% around where the general Death Knights are rated.
Yeah. So, look, at this point, while you were spouting your list, I was looking at chat, and at a certain point, some people were just like, damn, this is a long list.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no way that we can delete all this.
Really? Why not?
Your point, right?
No, that's not my point. That's not my point at all. That's the opposite of my point. My point is, why are we not deleting all these? These are things that make the game worse.
Right. No. And while I agree, I think we can have some debate on, like, individual cards. I think some people might disagree with, like, Eviscerate or whatever, individual cards. But I think, you know, the immediate answer to, it's like, why can't we delete all this, is like, wow, you're taking away a lot of cards that people are thinking are either iconic or fun in some way, you know, in their own way. Fun, right?
Or they just don't think it's a problem. They're like, what's the problem with an Aldor Peacekeeper in the arena? I'd rather have an Aldor Peacekeeper than a Death Knight half the time. Like, that's what's wrong with it. If you're killing Death Knights because it's too powerful and you can't counterplay it and blah, 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 why do you have an Aldor in this game? Why is that just a totally fine card that no one really objects to? Yeah,
no, I agree. And it's something that that sort of frustrates me, right? I'm like, okay, people, it's 2 prongs. Number one, I don't understand why people feel worse losing to a Death Knight than something like an Outdoor Peacekeeper, right? Which is pretty BS. Like, the tempo that you gain from an Outdoor
ridiculously BS card
is ridiculous. You basically give up 1 vanilla stat to add on a humility.
Yes, which reduces, like, possibly, like, 6 stats. 7 stats.
Right.
Like, who knows how many stats? And not only does it reduce that many stats, it reduces the stats in the right way. By making something only deal 1 damage, it makes the card near useless.
Yeah.
So it makes all of that health also near useless. So it's removing more stats than you think it's removing.
Yeah, exactly. Because the difference between, like, a 5/6 and a 1/6, it's not just, your health is invalidated because of the attack. It's like attack is tied to health and health is tied to attack. Once you lower one of them, the value of the other goes down significantly. So, and I don't know, like part of it is me being like, well, all right, it just seems pretty, I don't know, inconsistent, but this is the public that we're talking about, so inconsistent is to be expected. That they complain about Death Knights, but they don't complain about Outdoor Peacekeeper. And then second of all, it's like, there's not going to be any movement on Outdoor ever because there is no one talking about it.
No one cares about Outdoor Peacekeeper. No one at all. Like, at least some people like me care about Primordial Drake, but no one cares about Outdoor Peacekeeper. And you know what? Outdoor Peacekeeper is much better than Primordial Drake even.
Yeah.
It's like it's rated significantly higher. I don't disagree with the rating. Like, I would take it over Primordial Drake. And I don't even care about Outdoor Peacekeeper anywhere near as much as I care about Primordial Drake. Because it's just kind of an unoffensive card, despite being way too good.
Right. And here's something that I see, I think, all the time. And I've seen this as one of the major arguments for the Death Knights being a tier above. And I'm seeing
it's not a tier above.
Right. People love to state the argument. It's like, but it lasts for the entire game and you can't get rid of it.
You mean the 3 turns that the game still exists after they play a Death Knight because they start playing it on like turn 10?
Right. So, yeah, and I think it's an easy argument for people to put out there, right? It's a very easy argument because
the entire game.
Right. Because look, it seems like it's like, oh my gosh, it's there forever now. You can't polymorph it, you can't do anything. And so it seems like the effect is so big, and there is no, like, it's just a true statement.
Yeah, no,
right?
it's a true
there
statement
for the entire time. Like, I'm not arguing against that. The immediate question is sort of like, why does that matter so much?
Well, it matters because people want to know that they can win the game whenever they want. By playing a Death Knight, you've taken control away from the other player in terms of what game they have to be playing. And then people are just, like, at the end of the day, people are just uncomfortable being forced to play aggressively. Like, we see it all the time, right? Like, how many times when you're coaching someone do you see someone who's going face too often? And how many times when you're coaching someone do you see someone trade too often? Like, just think about that. And we're coaching, like, pretty decent players generally. The ratio is something like, at least in my experience, is something like 6 to 1. Out of one person that I'm like, okay, maybe, like, slow down a bit and, like, consider your trades more and how you can get punished. And then the other 6 people, I'm like, wait, but why are you hitting this minion? Why not get the face damage? Or, like, why not tempo out harder, right? Like, why play this, like, Arcane Intellect right now instead of getting 2 extra stats on the board, even if you're, like, technically wasting, like, a mana or whatever? Because people are just uncomfortable doing that naturally.
Yeah. It's the unknown, right? Like, in order to play aggressive, you have to play into the unknown more often.
You open yourself up to being punished.
But anyways.
And people don't like that they have to be punished. They don't like that their opponent is forcing them to roll the dice. They're okay rolling the dice, but they want to be in control. They want to be the one that decides to roll the dice.
Right. And what you give up for this sense of control is, like, you give up potential, opportunities to get ahead.
Percentages.
Right? Yeah, you get rid of that. And then you can, be happy with your clear board turn after turn after turn. And then suddenly you get into turn 9 and you're not really ahead when you could have been ahead just by, playing the percentages a bit more. But anyways, so look, nothing we can do now. Death Knights are gone, right?
Nothing I want to do. Like, I don't know about you. Would you put Death Knights back in the game if you could? If, let's say, Blizzard gave you the gavel and said, you get to decide, Death Knight's in the game or out of the game. Don't touch any other cards.
I would say out of the game.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, I would say out of the game. It's just, for us, it's always about process, right? And it's always about because it's 2 different questions. And I think people are confused because I talk about this on stream as well. So people are just like, it's like, why do you fight so hard to keep him in the game? I'm like, I'm fine with it. being
I'm
out
okay
of
with the
game.
Death Knights being out.
But it's about this pitchfork, echo chamber sort of mentality. And I'm just like, what's next, right? It's like, is it Bone Mare?
I don't even care about that. I don't even care about the pitchfork mentality. You care a lot about that, and you keep bringing it up. But I don't really care about that because that's just reflecting the people's will, and like that's what Blizzard's gonna do. What I care about is inconsistency. Because if Blizzard reflected the people's will, and they're like, oh, you don't want things that are super powerful and have very little counterplay in the game, huh? Okay, well, let's take away all those things. Then I'd be like, oh, good job, Blizzard. You're actually reflecting the people's will. Instead, what they're doing is they're reflecting literally what the people say. And people are very bad at expressing what they actually want. Which Blizzard knows, which is why they keep pushing back whenever people, like, say stuff. That's why Blizzard's not, like, actually responsive to the community in any timely fashion. Because they're always afraid, like, oh no, just give Synergy Picks a few more, like, weeks. Like, you'll like it. You'll learn to love it. Don't worry about it. And then we're like, no, this one's actually fundamentally flawed. Whereas other things, there's an uproar, and they're like, hey, hold on a bit, and like after a month or two, you never hear about it again, and you don't even remember that there was like an uproar about a certain card. So, like, what I care about is the consistency. Like I said, I want all these cards gone. This whole entire list. The ones that I said I prefer to stay, like Sap, Naturalize, Eaglehorn Bow, True Silver Champion, I think I'm just sentimentally attached. To get rid of all these other cards like Lich King and Ultimate Infestation and Meteor and whatever, you have to take away Naturalize and Sap and Eaglehorn Bow and like True Silver. Go for it. Like, all these cards out of the arena, fine by me. There's just, at a certain point, when the complaint is that this card is too good, basically, and this one card fits into almost any deck and is too good, then, like, just be consistent. Get rid of all this other stuff. Like, what is Lich King adding to the game? And here's the other thing. People are like, oh, some of these cards you'd, like, never see. Okay, but all of these cards you do see. If you put them into one group and call it overpowered cards, you see, like, 3 of them per game. You know how many Death Knights you see per game? Like, 0.1 something. And You know what? People were really pissed off about that 0.1 something Death Knights per game. But they're not all that pissed off about these 3 other overpowered cards that you see every single game. Why? Because no one has grouped them together and gave them a label. Blizzard did not do that for you. And so the people can't coordinate together to actually complain specifically about these cards. Even though if you gave them a label and called it like tier 1 cards, and then called the other stuff tier 2 cards and whatever, there will now be an uprising with pitchforks that are like, get tier 1 cards out of the arena. It's like, this is really how stupid of a process thing it is. And my problem with Blizzard is that they're not taking they're on the control board, right? And they're not taking the people's will and making something consistent out of it. So they're not reflecting how people really feel. They're just reflecting what people have been able to cobble together of a complaint about, as led by, like, right? That partly their fault, really, because they grouped the things together and called them Death Knights. It was like really easy pickings. But anyway, Death Knights are gone. That's our little rant about Death Knights. Let's talk about the actual game. Death Knights did not really affect the arena all that much. The arena is going to be pretty much the same as it was before. So how do you play in the arena? We have actually, with this whole dual arena stuff and all this, the synergy picks and whatever, we've talked a lot in this expansion, a lot more than we usually do, about like news and things like that. And so I really want to get back to, like, in these 2 weeks that we have before we have to talk about new cards, I really want to get some things out there about how to actually become better in the arena, right? Like some like practical skills that you can take from this podcast and like apply to your game, no matter what level you are. Like, you could be fairly new at this, you could be fairly bad at this, you can be like an infinite player already. This is all stuff that you should still be thinking about. And no one's perfect at this, because this is a very like hard concept, so it'll help everybody. And so today's deep fried meta is about setting up the board. So Merps, I'm going to pitch you the first hypothetical, okay? And what I mean,
I think this is like the format from now on. I'm always like, like your sounding board. I'm always the guy you ask questions to. I like it.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's fine. Okay.
I will ask you the first question. So setting up the board, generally, where I'm coming from with this is, whenever you play a minion or whatever, you set up the board, right? And then whenever your opponent plays a minion, they quote-unquote set up the board, but you can't really control that. But then you can play minions in response to that, knowing how your opponent will probably trade onto it. So imagine if your opponent has like a 4/4 and a 6/6, and you play a 5/5. Well, they're either going to throw the 4/4 in and deal 1 extra damage, or put the 6/6 in. You kind of have a good idea of what they're going to do. On the other hand, if you play 2 3/3s, they're probably going to throw each of their minions into your 3/3s, so they have one thing with 1 health and one thing with 3 health. So you have some sort of control over how the board ends up looking just by playing minions. And that's the setup, right? That's how you set up the board. And you can set up the board for 2 things. You can set up the board for anything, but these are the 2 most common and most high impact things. One is board clears and one is buffs. So, first question. You have a consecration in your hand. You are fighting for the board. You don't have control of the board or whatever. What are some things you do to set up the consecration?
What are some things that I do? Okay, is there a set board state on the other side?
Well, you're fighting for the board, right? So your opponent's dropping some minions. You don't know which ones that they're going to drop. You have some minions you can pick. Just pretend that you're not limited by your hand. And you can like instead of dropping a 6/6, you could drop a 4/4 and a 2/2, right?
Right. So general things that I want to be looking at, right? I'm trying to fight for the board. After their turn, they're probably going to have the tempo lead, right? They're going to have stuff onto the board. So if my consecration isn't good enough this turn to wipe the board, what I want to do is just math it out, right? See, it's like, okay, if they have like a 6/6, a 3/3, and a 1/1, right? I want to put out minions that are going to be as annoying as possible and sort of set up the consecration better for next turn. So what I want to do is like put down multiple small stuff that makes it annoying for him to trade, like, stuff that has either like stealth or death rattles, or you want to, like, if they just have like lots of things that are annoyingly like 2 3s and 3 3s, right? What you can do in that circumstance as well is you can just like slam one giant thing, like let's say a Sated Threshodon, or a little bit worse, but Boulderfist Ogre, right? And you say, if you trade into my guy, and I basically just played like I essentially played a big taunt, I'm okay with it. I didn't set up the consecration really, but I'm fine with it.
Especially if your guy has low attack and high health, because you're just maximizing what your guy's doing.
Exactly.
Like the Threshodon.
Right. But what you can do is just say, all right, I'll take 1 round of face damage, and then I'll consecrate behind it. I'll have the initiative, and I'll be able to do something with it, right? So those are some things that I'm looking at, just based on your sort of broad sort of question of how I would try to set up for a consecration.
Yeah, I think that's good. It's the 2 ways, right? You want to you kind of need to predict what your opponent's going to do. So your opponent, what you don't want your opponent to do is to drop one big thing. So what you don't want to do is to make your things very good for him to drop one good thing. So you don't want to play medium things, because if you play medium things, your opponent drops one big thing. That's what he wants to do, because his big thing can eat your medium thing. And then, yes, you may be able to consecrate the big thing away, but he has nothing else on the board. So you're going to use a consecration to deal 2 damage? That's not worth it. So you go low or you go big. If you play the biggest thing, he's incentivized to play a lot of small things so he can get past you and hit your face, right? Because you only have 1 attack on your turn. You can't remove his entire board. It's a very popular normal play. Or you play the little things, so you can determine how to chip at your opponent before you consecrate. So that's the normal setup for consecration. And you may be thinking, well, that's like most of the things you can do. Yes, but it gets rid of also half the things you can do. Do not play medium-sized minions. That's a pretty good tip. Like, if you have a consecration in your hand generally, like, don't play your medium-sized minions. Like, if normally you don't have that many choices in this game, right? You could play like one of like 3 things on any particular turn. So if you can eliminate one of the things, a medium-sized minion, which is a pretty popular thing, then you've narrowed down your choices considerably, and you're making right choices considerably better. And again, these are things that are looking forward 1 turn, 2 turn, 3 turns ahead. So your setup play on this turn may not pay off on the next play, but then if you set it up again, it may pay off the turn after that, because your opponent can't keep playing around it. Like, at a certain point, your opponent's just like, all right, I guess if he keeps playing big things, I gotta go small. Like, we do that too, right? We're like, well, I guess if he has a consecration, we lose. Like, we don't have a good read that he doesn't have a consecration, but we can't win any other way, because otherwise we're just going to, like, give him the value, whether he has consecration or not.
Right. So a lot of times what will happen, or maybe not a lot of times, but sometimes what will happen is you try to set up for the consecration, and either just because of sheer coincidence, or maybe your opponent senses it, right? Like just sort of senses that you're trying to set something up, and you're not able to hit it next turn. You're not able to hit it next turn. That's fine. I've seen a lot of people try to set it up, and then when they're like, oh, okay, well, that failed, so time to go to a plan B, right? Well, you know, your plan A of setting up the consecration, maybe it didn't pay off this turn, but let's like, do you have the tools to try to set it up again, right? Do you have something in to potentially get them to play into a consecration next turn, right? And even if they are expecting it, lots of times, like you said, it's like they can't. You're forcing them to just act again, right? To do more stuff, and sometimes just the sheer number of times that you're just like, okay, I'm gonna try to set it up again. And even if you know it, maybe you just don't have the cards to play around it anymore, right? Yep. And in order for them to play around it, they have to make a significantly significantly worse trades on the board, in which they can't take that, or they're not willing to take that because they're still not sure they have a consecration. Or if they take that, you're absolutely fine with it, because then you've delayed your damage to your face, and they've played into another card that's potentially in your hand, right? So setting up board clears, you don't want to look at it as just like, if your initial plan of setting it up fails, the whole plan was a failure. You want to just keep on setting it up if you can, and then just by sort of like presenting your opponent with these issues, sometimes you just win because you're just like, I can't do anything about it. And
as long as you have a consecration in your hand, you should be considering how to set up for it. Because these are cards that could be game-winning if your opponent plays into them. So incentivize your opponent to play into them. They don't know you have a consecration. Like, that's your advantage. Okay, so how do things change now if instead of a consecration, you have a volcanic potion?
Oh, okay. So instead of... because the thing with consecration, crazy, but it doesn't hit your side of the board, right? Oh, wow, crazy, I know. So with Volcanic Potion, what you want to do is you obviously don't want to be playing like stuff that makes it awkward for you, right? So let's say, if you play a wasp, for example, right? If you play a giant wasp, you're thinking it might be, oh, okay, he can drop something really big, I'll kill that, and then I'll wipe out all the small stuff with my Volcanic Potion. And I've seen this line of thought from some players, but then you have to think about it from your opponent's side.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, and you know what I'm talking about. Like, they're going to be like, okay, I'm just going to drop multiple small stuff.
Which is what you have incentivized them to do. So you basically told them, play into my consecration. And they do, and you're like, wait, but I don't have a consecration. I have a Volcanic Potion and my wasp is dead too.
And then sometimes they only play like two small things, right? And then you're just like, okay, well, I can't. So with the Volcanic Potion, it requires a different kind of setup, just because you can make it awkward for yourself, right? You want to be dropping the one big guy, you want to be dropping the Boulderfist Ogre, you want to be dropping stuff with like Death Rattle, like at high health, right? But sometimes you can't really do that, and sometimes you have to just punt a little bit, like paying a little bit here or there, and recognize that even if you make it obvious, well, they have to play cards to really play around yours. And I have seen a lot of people make really obvious setups to me, and when it comes back to me, I'm just like, oh well, that sucks. I actually can't play around this. It happens a good percentage of time.
Yep, like I said, you only have 2-3 options every turn. So sometimes you don't have the option to not play into what your opponent is obviously setting up for, because as good of a read as you have, it's probably like 80% chance that they have a Volcanic Potion. And you're like, well, on the 20% off chance that they don't have it, this is a way better play, right? And on the 80% chance that they do, this is a slightly less good play because I probably just lose anyway because of my hand. So you're trying to make your opponent so that even if they're the smartest opponent in the world, they will still have to play into your setup. because that's how the game is. And I want to add, so I agree with everything Merp says, and I want to add one more scenario onto the Volcanic Potion one, which is it's possible to play a lot of small things into the Volcanic Potion. Not wasps. I mean, like 1/1s and 2/2s, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you play a lot of small things, you can chip away at their bigger things before you use the Volcanic Potion, and then you don't actually hurt any part of your board. You don't want to play things like 2/5s, right? Like, because then you're going to kill something or hurt something, and you're going to kill your own thing. But you do want to play things with like either low attack and low health, or like medium attack and low health, so you can chip away whatever your opponent plays. Now, the problem with that, and I've seen people set this up incorrectly so many times, is you don't do that on an empty board. Because if you play 10 mana's worth of small stuff on an empty board, your opponent then play 10 mana's worth of big and small stuff, you're not gaining anything from that Volcanic Potion, no matter how you're throwing things in. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it by setting up small stuff is if your opponent already has a lead on the board. Like, let's say your board is clear, but your opponent has like a 5/5 on the board. Well, then you play a bunch of small stuff. He plays his stuff. Now he has like 15, 30 like stats worth of like stuff on the board. You have like 20 worth of stats on the board. You get to chip away, use your Volcanic Potion really well, right? So the way to use your Volcanic Potion by playing small, if that's what you're doing, big always works, right? Like when you play that Threshodon, that always works. But if you want to do the small play, you have to be a little bit behind. Not too behind, because then the Volcanic Potion can't catch you back up, but like a little bit behind.
Yeah, I think that's a good good recognition, right? And we've had this, from time to time where you're at the end game and you still have a Volcanic Potion in hand, and you know that, like, man, I need to get some value out of this potion, right? I can't just have it be the last card in my hand and essentially have it be a card that only deals 2 damage, period. So yeah, like during those times when you're nearing the end game or you're at the end game and like both players have limited resources, when you're trying to set up for it, because sometimes you still need to set up for it, make sure you don't play too much at that time. Like play, maybe just one of your minions, or play like 2 really annoying small things. Certainly you don't need to tempo out, right? And this will differ from situation to situation, but if you recognize the fact that you need to get value out of the Volcanic Potion, don't play everything. It sounds crazy that I even have to say this, but I see people do it all the time, right?
Yep.
And they're like, oh, well, organically, a situation will happen in which I can use the Volcanic Potion. And maybe it will happen just by you playing everything out. But why not proactively try to set up for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
totally
there
agree.
You go.
All right, now, Volcano.
Volcano.
Or see, Twisting Nether.
Okay.
How do you set up for that?
Be annoying as possible. Be as annoying as possible. And for something like Twisting Nether, or like that's even, I would say, that's even like better, because it doesn't even matter if they put down, let's say, 2 Crypt Lords and then they start growing into like 1/12s, right? And then suddenly you're looking at Volcano, you're just like, damn, it can't kill these 2 or 3 drops. But I mean, it's very similar with that. You want to just play small annoying taunts. You want to just play small stuff in which, like, if they look at it, they're like, damn, like, do I want to get unwilling sacrificed, right? No, I don't. And then in order, so I'm going to lean more heavily on the Twisting Nether and the Warlock one. They have to push your face if they want to win, right? So they're going to play into it. And it's part of the reason why Twisting Nether is so powerful. So you want to drop stuff like Infested Torn if you have it, and you should, because you should be prioritizing those things as a Warlock. Dropping just like small annoying things, dropping stuff that doesn't really use resources. So something like perhaps a Gnomish Inventor, right? Cabal Couriers are also fine as well. Just stuff that helps you soak up damage, and then you Twisting Nether, and it's good. Like,
yeah, what you basically want them to do is you want to slowly give your opponent the board.
Yeah.
Like, you want your opponent to gain like 2 to 4 mana tempo on the board on you every turn, while it seems like you're still doing stuff. Right? Like, use your hero powers, play your cards that draw cards, play your really bad cards that are just anti-tempo. Like, we all have those cards that get in, like, it's a 6 mana 5/5 and it doesn't do anything for your deck. And you're like, I gotta play it sometime. Or, like, you have no dragons, but you have to take a bookworm at some point. Like, play those cards. And they will force your opponent to play more cards, and then they'll end up playing more into the Twisting Nether than otherwise.
Right. And especially with those cards, like if you just drop a random bookworm on turn 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll just be like, I shouldn't give it any credit. But then they'll start thinking, it's like, damn, if they bone marrow this, it's really bad for me. So it soaks up, 6 more damage, and most likely it soaks up like 7 or 8 damage because of overkill, right?
Yep.
And then they have to drop more behind it, because if they don't, like they could get beaten by something like Abyssal Enforcer, and it just puts them in a really weird position. And then that's when you Twisting Nether.
That's when you Twisting Nether, yep. So notice how that's not how we set up a Volcanic Potion or a Consecration. No. I think a lot of people, whenever they have a double-sided board clear or a board clear in general, start pretending like they have a Twisting Nether. And then they're like, oh, control doesn't work, I lose anyway. That's because you're doing your control thing wrong. Like, know what cards you have and how to set up for these cards. If you have things that only clear small, like it's a board clear, but it's a small board clear, well, you have to set up the board for that. Whereas your more greedy plays that you see like streamers and whatever do, those only work when you have those really massive board clears. And you shouldn't even be that greedy with them. You should get to a point where you're like, oh, this is going to clear 3 minions off the board. Done. Like, sold. 8 mana, kill 3 cards. I'm good. Okay. So, speaking of Bone Mare from your example before, let's move on to the setting up buffs part. How do you set up a Bone Mare?
Basically, okay. So, with Bone Mare, what you want to do, it depends on the board state, right? But if they have stuff on the board, put down enough stuff so that they have to, like, they cannot clear easily with their board, right? Like, if they have a 6/6 and you can either put out a 6/6, but you really want to set up a Bone Mare, put down like your Harvest Golem and some other 3-drop, right? Just do that if you can. And
it's really easy. It's not difficult to set up a Bone Mare. That's why people hate Bone Mares.
That's why people hate Bone Mare. Yeah, like by doing that, by putting out more, I'll call them like hits, right? Mm-hmm. Like targets. And something like a Harvest Golem is like 2 targets, right? Yep. You have to hit it twice. By putting out more targets than your opponent has initiative, you have yourself a Bone Mare target. It's that easy.
And here's the thing: when you get a couple wins in the arena or whatever, fake the Bone Mare. Like on turn 6, like, because a lot of the times the little small stuff that you can play are like not as good later on in the game as they were if you were able to play them on curve. But by turn 6, you're like, I can't play these on curve anymore. So if you have enough of them to basically be on curve, just do it. Your opponent, unless they have a board clear, will start spending like weird amounts of resources to prevent you from Bone Maring your target. Which is fair, because if you Bone Mare on curve, you're like at a really huge advantage, and Bone Mares are everywhere in this meta. But it means you can fake it and get like a little bit more efficiency out of your like smaller crap that otherwise wouldn't do as much. So yeah, that's Bone Mare. And finally, this is the hardest one, and I mess this up all the freaking time. Savage Roar. It's also why I hate the card. Because there's a way to play to set up Savage Roar, and then there's the way I use Savage Roar, which is try to play good and have bigger board, right? Because if you just have good play, you will set up these cards that buff a lot of things. Like, it's fine. It's a snowball card, right? So you make good plays on the board, you get to snowball, and you're fine. But there's a way to actually maximize this without necessarily just saying play better.
Yeah. Okay, with Savage Roar, because of the fact that it buffs each individual thing you have on the board, you should be spreading out, right? But spreading out to a safe degree, because I've seen some people, where obviously they've tried to set it up, and then it's like, well, do you have a read that your opponent doesn't have the board clear? And then if the answer is no, like maybe you shouldn't be trying to set up for the best possible Savage Roar that you can. So that depends on your read. But yeah, with Savage Roar, like we all know, more targets for Savage Roar means more damage with the Savage Roar. So that's always good. But you do want to try to balance it out. And sometimes instead of getting like, an additional two 1s on the board, let's just say, wait, maybe a 2-3 on the board is better, right? Because it's tougher in this meta to deal 3 damage AoE than 2 damage AoE.
Yeah. And here's the thing with the Savage Roar setup. Because it's a multi-setup, you want your opponent to be frustrated. A lot of the buffs that happen in KFT especially are all single target buffs. And your opponent knows this. They're trying to prevent you from being able to buff a thing. But they're not necessarily trying to always prevent you from buffing 2 things. And I do the same thing. So a lot of times, if I have to leave my opponent with a minion, I just decide to go face. Because they can buff anything they want anyway. Like, if they have a Bone Mare, I can't stop them.
Right. It's like, does the choice of them buffing, like, one of these multiple small things matter? And you're like, no, not really. Like, not enough that I'd give up the face damage.
And especially if they're, like, small enough stuff that you have that, like, a Sunborn Valkyr would, like, not make that much of a difference even, then your opponent really won't care. So how you want to set up the board is not just, like, go wide as possible, but to, like, maybe put a taunt in place to make it so awkward that your opponent would just be like, all right, I give up. If you have a single buff, I'll take it, right? Because I have to. And then you hit them with the multi-buff, and they get way more screwed than if you were playing a Bone Mare. Like, that's like the trick. Obviously, it's not going to work all the time, but, like, you should have that in your mind when you're debating which play to possibly play. If you have a card like a Savage Roar, like a Mark of the Lotus, like a, just anything that, but like a Stormwind Champion, right? Like, just anything that'll buff everything on the board. You want to make it so that your opponent gives up on removing all of your board.
Yeah.
Because then you get the bonus. Because maybe they could have removed, like, let's say you had 5 things and they could have removed 3. Maybe they just removed none. Maybe they only remove 1 because it has an ability and go face with the other ones. And that's when you profit. So you want your opponent to walk into that trap.
Yep. Seems good. Do you have any other scenarios?
Nope, that was it. I think that covers, like, the basics of what you can set up for. And again, like, I don't do this right every turn, when I have it. I don't even think about it every turn, even though I should. It's at once, like, a really advanced concept that all the advanced players are still making little mistakes here and there. And it's also a concept that even the worst players should be thinking about. Because it's just, like, free advantage, right? Like, if you're thinking about this versus not thinking about it.
Yep.
And most of the time you're thinking about it in terms of board clears, not buffs, but KFT kind of evens it out a little. Anyway, that's it for Deep Fried Meta. Let's move on to question from the GOAT. What do we have, Merps?
All right, so question from the GOAT is specifically targeted to ADWCTA this week.
Oh, great.
For those of you who were not aware, and it's been a week because this happened during last Sunday, right?
This happened. Okay.
Yeah. A clip of ADWCTA revealing the email that his mom sent him went viral, right? And you can just search it up. I think it was. I think the title of the post on Reddit is called, like, "When Your Mom Watches Your Stream" or something. ...
Thanks, Emmy.
Yeah, thank you, Emmy. Anyways, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it by now. My question is, like, has your mom seen this? Like, what is her reaction to this?
Okay, I'm going to read this again for those on the Lightforge who didn't know, because this wasn't on the Lightforge. This happened right after last week's Lightforge. So if you just listen to the Lightforge and you don't look at Reddit or my Twitter, or Twitch's Twitter, Twitch retweeted this, like, the clip, like the official Twitch.
It's pretty great. Yeah.
Like, when watching the Lightforge, if you guys are listening to Lightforge, we have this on YouTube too. So while watching the Lightforge, my mom sent me an email that says, "ADWCTA, I saw your face through Twitch just now." The title of the email is "I saw your face." I saw
always the face, man.
I saw your face through Twitch right now and feel very bad because I have never seen your face like this. Too fat with 10 O's. It is terrible. You used to be a handsome young man, but now, ... Have you started your exercise? Please do it ASAP, double exclamation point. This is not only important to your image, it will also help you have a healthy life. I hope I can see a better you when you come home in that Thanksgiving weekend. Note that there are only about 2 weeks left. No excuses. Don't be lazy, Mom.
Yeah. So you told her, right? Or did you tell her?
I told her. I told her on Monday. After I was like, hey, by the way, Mom, you know that email you sent me? She's like, yes, are you going to exercise? I'm like, no, step back.
No, it's like, no, of course not. Let's talk about something else.
Take a step back. I just want to let you know that, I read it out loud to the stream. I don't know if you were watching. I was like, I wasn't watching. I only watched for 1 minute and I couldn't look at your face anymore because it was so fat. I'm not making any of this up. It's literally the phone call how it goes. I'm like, okay, well... we put it on Reddit afterwards, and she's like, what's Reddit? I'm like, it's like, think of it as like a forum that like every single person like knows about, at least, even if they don't use, like, lots of users. And this was the one about the game, and then it got a lot of upvotes, and everyone found it very interesting. And she's like, why do they find it interesting? Do they think you're fat too? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe some do, but anyway, I just want to let you know you're internet famous now. And she's like, oh, okay. And I emailed her the link. And she's like, all right, I'll look at it, afterwards sometime later in the week. But does this mean you're going to exercise now? And that's it. And I haven't heard from her since. I have not heard any reactions. There's no response to my email that forwarded the clip to her, or rather the Reddit post to her. Just absolutely nothing.
So, yeah, that's interesting. So we still don't know if she's seen it.
Oh, yeah, I guess she could have ignored my email.
She could have ignored your email. It is possible.
It's like, what, like 6,000 upvotes on Reddit? She's like, I don't care.
Well, she doesn't know what that means.
She doesn't know what that means. So, if you guys don't know, okay, here's a story about my mom. This is a bonus story about my mom, and you're a part of this, Merps, because I need corroboration. I'm not making this up.
Okay, go on.
I hope you remember this. It was so weird. This was like, I want to say like senior year, high school. I'm on the phone with you. We're like talking about like, I don't know, whatever we talked about back
okay,
then.
I know where you're going.
You know the story. Yeah, this happens. Yeah. So Merps hears all of this. I'm just in my room on my bed. My mom comes. She's like, hey, I need you. I'm filling out this financial aid information for your college. And I'm like, okay, what's up? And she's like, so there's a question. Are you my biological child? And I'm like, Mom, do you know what biological child means? She's like, yeah, it means that, like, did I give birth to you? Are we related by blood, right? I'm like, yeah, Mom, that's what it means. She's like, okay. So, are you my biological child? And that's the whole story. Because I couldn't answer that question.
Yeah.
I could not answer this question to her. This is not something that I know for a fact either way. And I just kind of said her away. I was like, Mom, you have to answer that question. I don't, like, is there something you need to tell me that I should know?
Right. It's like, is this your way of telling me something?
And she was like, oh, no. Never mind. I'll just fill in something. To this day, I don't know what she filled in. Because it's a financial aid thing.
She's like, God damn.
She's like mailed it in afterwards.
It's like, didn't take the hint.
That's a very typical my mom story, by the way. So if you're ever wondering how I turned out the way I did, yeah. So bonus question from the goat story.
Yep. All right. Well, that's good. Let us know if your mom actually watched the video and if she responds.
I will. Okay, so question from the GOAT is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/grinninggoat. Thank you so much to our patrons who keep supporting us. It really means a lot to us. Okay, and we'll end this with a very quick card good bad. Card good bad. Actually, no, we got one more after this. We have the Class Talk Rogue too, but card good bad first. Corpse Taker. I wanted to talk about it because we rated a 77, which is pretty low on our tier list. It's pretty much like, don't pick unless you absolutely have to. And every time this card comes up, especially if it comes up earlier in the draft, the entire chat wants me to pick this card. Like, it's apparently viewed, I think, by a lot of people as like a not horrible pick if you pick it early enough in the draft. And I just want to take this chance to explain to you that yes, this is a horrible pick. Because I have succumbed to chat. I don't know how many times you succumbed to chat on this, but I've succumbed to chat many, many times. Especially during the synergy pick era.
No, I don't succumb to chat on stuff like this. I succumb when it comes to like the real meme cards, all right? There's no meme potential with Corpse Taker.
No, there isn't. Right? You play it, even if it gets all of its abilities. It's like, ooh, fine.
Yeah.
So I picked it many times just to make sure that, you know, so I can confirm to myself that I'm not being crazy when this card was rated. And I wasn't. It's a bad card. Even if you can pick. Because what are you going to get? You're going to almost get a taunt, right? But if you don't get a taunt, your opponent has way too much information on you, first of all. If you don't get a taunt, your opponent knows you have no taunt in the deck. Like, it's over. Like, your opponent's going face. You're screwed.
There's been a few times in which I was like a mid-range deck, and I was like, I don't know if I should be aggressive. And they played a Corpse Taker, and it didn't taunt, and I know they didn't have a taunt in hand. I'm just like, oh, you fool. I win this game.
So it could backfire on you in terms of giving your opponents information, like, pretty easily.
Yeah.
And two, if it has a taunt, then it becomes a bear, which is a not terribly great 3-drop that you have to pay 4 mana for. So you need the Divine Shield. Like, you absolutely need the Divine Shield for this card to be good.
Yeah, you do.
There are very few Divine Shield cards in this game. Very few Divine Shield cards in this game that you're by offering rate. Like, there's a lot of cards with Divine Shield, but by offering rate and when you're going to pick it, very few. And even if you have a Divine Shield, the chances that you will get this card before the Divine Shield card is like half. Right? Yeah. It's a little better than that because, you know, of the times that you actually get this card are the only times that you worry about it. And in those times, Divine Shield is less. But so it's not really half. It's like much more than half. But still, that's like a 20-30% rate that even if you have one Divine Shield card in your deck, this card is still not going to have a Divine Shield. So it has, like, no matter what you do, you have, like, a 1/3 chance of having it be, like, a really bad bear. That's and then the other times, it's what? Like, a Silver Moon Guardian, right?
Yeah.
Which is, like...
That's the upside.
Upside. It's like okay 4-drop. Or you add a taunt to that, which would make it, like, a good 4-drop. But that's it. It doesn't make it, like, the best card ever or anything like that. So in the upside scenario... it's like a good 4-drop, and you get that if you end up with the Divine Shield card at like a 70-60% rate. And otherwise, it's just a really bad card. Like, that averages out, and that's what the algorithm is doing here. It's averaging it out into like a pretty bad situation for you. So, gets a little better when it comes to Paladins, but even in Paladins, right? Like, there's no Paladin cards that actually have a Divine Shield on the card itself, except for the Righteous Defender. And
Righteous Protector.
Yeah, Righteous Protector, and that Blackguard, like, epic card that you, like, almost never see. So even in Paladin, which you think, like, oh, lots of Divine Shield, it's not that much more, that many more Divine Shields.
Blackguard doesn't have Divine Shield.
Sorry, not Blackguard, the other one. Oh, I'm thinking of the legendary one. You're really not going to see that one then. Never.
Yeah, oh, the Bolvar?
Yeah, I'm thinking of Bolvar.
Wait, how'd you? Okay, yeah. What?
No, I had a Bolvar in my last Paladin run, and it went like 8-0 to start. So, like, in my mind, it's a very familiar card in the Paladin.
I gotcha.
But yeah, so just wanted to, you know, make it clear that we have addressed this. Corpse Taker, bad card. If you already have this, like, if you already happen to have 2 Divine Shield cards in your deck and a bunch of taunts, and like maybe an extra Lifesteal or Wind Fairy card, then sure, fine, it's a good pick. But don't, like, your odds of getting these are so low. Like, don't draft a Corpse Taker thinking you're going to get your outs. Right. You're just not going to be offered them, even if you want to go down for your outs.
Okay.
All right. And we're going to play Rogue next, by the way.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Wait, did we set that?
We didn't set that because we couldn't, but, like, I said it afterwards.
You said, oh,
like,
okay.
Yeah, because I needed to tell our YouTube manager, like, how to make the graphic.
Got it. Okay.
So it is Rogue. So Class Talk Rogue still on top now that we're back into the normal, you know, KFT meta.
I don't know. I haven't played Rogue since I played lots of Warrior. I played Hunter. I mean, chat always, like, if you see my play distribution, I think, like, Warrior and Hunter to an extreme amount. And sometimes even mage now, because it's not like the boogeyman anymore. But rogue, I don't get that much experience. So you take it away. Do you play it?
No, also not, because chat never votes for it. I get a lot of like paladins and like druids and mages, but also a lot of shamans.
Yeah.
For some reason, chat likes to see me play shaman. Probably because I'm really bad at shaman.
They like to see us fail.
No, we haven't gotten a 12-win shaman at KFT yet. I kind of want to get one before it ends. So I'm like on board with the whole shaman thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So analysis of Rogue and KFT. It was like top tier. It's probably still top tier because nothing's really changed. And like I said, right, we went down that list, and like most of the cards that are in the classic set that are super overpowered that you see in the arena a lot are the rogue cards. They are Backstab, Eviscerate, and Betrayal. And so as long as those cards stay in the game without like that 50% penalty, you're gonna see a lot of very high powered rogues, and especially with that hero power.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's it for this Lightforge. We're gonna get one more Lightforge next week. Hopefully, Blizzard doesn't make any announcements, so we can really focus on like get one last like improve your game deep fried meta in like as a focus for next week before the card reveals start happening, and then we get wrapped up into the K and C, not KNC card reveals.
Okay. Yep. Anyways, this is I thought this was good. Touch upon the news. We talked about a nice setting up the board situation that's very applicable.
Very, very applicable, especially in this meta. You're setting up the board on both sides. All right. Until next time, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. Good luck in the arena, guys.
All right.